What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of my podcast. If you are tuning in for the first time, my name is Phillip Velayo. I am a former scout sniper turned professional competitive shooter, as well as creative. I love teaching people the art of precision rifle shooting, as well as bringing the long range shooting to life through my visuals. And I just love, teaching or educating people or inspiring people about life's journey. So in this podcast, I talk about a lot of things, but specifically today's my birthday, and I talk about what I've learned over my 36 years of life. But I think the main kind of story that a lot of you guys maybe or not know is I actually got dropped from sniper school during my first attempt. So I talk about that through my lens, obviously, and kind of what drives me today of trying to be a better version of myself every day because, again, I'm not perfect. And that was a really hard life lesson for me of, not letting a moment define who I am and, not to get complacent. So I've got some exciting news with regard to 2025 that I'm going to be sharing in the episode as well. So stay tuned and I hope you enjoy the episode. What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 4. Appreciate everyone tuning in. If you're watching this, hello. You get to stare at my fresh fade and my awesome man bun. Got a haircut today. I was able to see my barber, and I enjoy, going to get a haircut. It's nice to be able to sit down and, have a nice conversation with my barber here, Scott, a super awesome guy. And, I've been going to him for the last, honestly, 5-6 years. And I look forward to it every 2 weeks. I get my haircut booked every 2 weeks. And, in the Marine Corps, I get a haircut every week, so it was a different change of pace. But I just enjoy, I just love having a fresh fade. I hate having super long hair on my sides. I just feel gross. So I'm always, even in the Marine Corps, I was always called Moto because my fades were always super high. But I've tried the low fade, and I just don't think my hair, allows me to grow a nice low fade like you see some of those operators or the recon guys that I always envied with their low regs or medium regs. You guys know what I'm talking about. But got a haircut today, and just really caught up with some client work. I'm getting ready to go to California on Saturday for a video shoot. It's actually a student of mine, a precision rifle shooter student, and he is in wealth management. And I've talked about this before. I'm always super intrigued with shooters that, got into the precision rifle space, that have, I shouldn't say, they just don't have a background in military sniping. They're not really hunters. They just, wanted a way to express themselves or pick up a hobby. But specifically with this client of mine or student, he did it as a way to connect with his older brother. So that's the thing that they do together, which again is super cool. But being able to dive into his backstory of how he got into wealth management, how he got into precision rifles, I'm excited to kind of peel back the layers of that onion, and again just be able to see how we all kind of align in terms of our passion for putting a small little projectile out 1,000 yards away. It's pretty cool. But anyways, I digress. I've got some notes here for podcast 4, and before I lose you guys, if you guys are not falling asleep yet on your drive or kind of zoning out while you're in the reloading room prepping for some training, prepping for a match, I've got some exciting news. And that exciting news is, with it being October 18th, not only my birthday, but Alaska Day. So that special news is I'll be coming to Alaska in June of 2025 to teach my first set of precision rifle classes in Alaska. And no, this is not like a, coming back into the training atmosphere. If anything, for quite some time, it's been on like a bucket list of mine to be able to go back home and teach, at home. And this past August, I was given the opportunity by Sarah Stallone from Accurate Advantage up there. She reached out to me actually right as I was getting ready to go on my caribou hunt, and she called me, and she left an awesome voicemail. So, I immediately called her back, and we were able to, the last couple of months, just kind of pencil in some dates and make it work. And again, back in, I think it was like 2015 or maybe summer 2016, I was teaching at cyber school, and I remember following Frank Galli from Cyberside, and I remember his article of him going up to teach classes in Alaska. And I just remember it. I was like, man, that's so cool, and at this point of my career in 2015, I knew that I wanted to be a instructor outside of, the military, to continue to teach long range. And, early in my, career as a cyber school instructor, for the 3 years that I was there, so 2015, at this point, I didn't know I was getting out yet. So, being an instructor was super fresh. I was trying to, absorb as much information as I could as I was diving into the competition space. Frank is a staple in our community in terms of, the sniper realm with sniper side, and just the amount of knowledge that he has, and this reputation in the industry. And and I think at that point, Frank didn't know who I was. I was just some boot instructor. And I remember coming back from ranges and, watching some of the videos that he posted on YouTube. And it was pretty cool in terms of, even though we had never met, a lot of what he was talking about with regard to like fundamentals and, grip pressure and, how his hand placement was on the stock. We aligned very well, and, I was like, man, it'd be cool to meet Frank one day. And I think maybe later that year, 2017 or 2016, again, I can't remember the years, they're all kind of blending in together, but I ended up meeting him at SHOT Show when I went to SHOT Show that following year while I was teaching at cyber school. Again, community is really small, so was able to, connect with him through another mutual friend of ours who's a sniper. So Frank and I, I got a really great relationship. I consider him a mentor in this space of precision shooting. And, I remember when I got the news to be able to teach in Alaska, or, afforded the opportunity, I called him and let him know, just because, out of respect of, not wanting to poach his clients or whatever. It was like, hey man, like, would love to teach in Alaska. And God, he gave me his blessing. So that was cool, just to be able to hear that from Frank. And even since my recent transition, has been super supportive of my next journey. And I got nothing but love for Frank. So Frank, if you're listening to this, that props to you. And appreciate you. So anyways, back to the classes in Alaska. So summer of 2025, June timeframe, first 2 weeks of June. Right now we have the Talkeetna range, which is the range that, again, if you've been to Frank or Mark Taylor's classes up there, that's where they typically do their classes. I think it's 1,000-yard range. The other range that I'm unfamiliar with, that I just found out about it when I was talking to Sarah, is the Snowshoe Gun Club out in Kenai. So two separate venues, based off of, again, this is just talking to Sarah. And, the biggest thing was like, when I went up there to teach classes, I wanted to make sure that I was able to, reach the full range of spectrum of shooters, between, introductory level shooters to even like advanced competitors, or, shooters that have competition experience and want to just kind of like, maybe break from mid-pack to that upper echelon. And, we're still kind of laying out maybe the groundwork for what classes, but I think we've decided on three of them. So the first one being obviously a foundation course is what I'm going to call it. It's going to be a 4-day and then a 3-day intro to competition. which is intro to precision rifle competitions, whether it be PRS or NRL hunter style. And then the third one, which the first two will be held in Kenai, and then the third one would be at the advanced competition. And then again, if you're following the NRL hunter, you know that the third week of June, the week of summer solstice, is going to be the NRL hunter Alaska match. So I think I'm going to be sticking around for that as well. Be able to be super cool to, again, be home for that month, visit some family, and be able to train my fellow Alaskans. So registration will, I'll keep you guys updated on that, where registration is going to be at. I know I'm still working on getting an email list. That's a big question that I've been getting with a lot of you guys of, how do you subscribe to my email list? I don't have one right now, but I plan on getting one set up. And so huge shout out to Sarah. If you're listening to this, thank you so much. I'm super excited for the opportunity to come back home and be able to give back to the community. And hopefully, I know that community is probably already built, but hopefully be able to attract more, riflemen into the fold of, precision rifle competitions. Because as you guys know, I'm super passionate about, the competition space, and just, I know how awesome and how many, lifelong friends you're able to kind of bring into your life after shooting a couple competitions. I'll keep you updated again on registration dates, on prices, all that things. But if you're listening to this and you're in the Alaska area and that suits you, if you know anybody in Alaska, go ahead and put those dates in first 2 weeks of June. And I think the third class, I forgot. The third class would be an advanced competition, and that would be at the Kenai range, because I've heard that there is some pretty good wind conditions because it's right off the coast there. So I figured that would be a really great class for competitive shooters or more advanced shooters. And you guys know I hate that word events, but just someone that is wanting to progress their skills onto that next level of their skill set behind a precision rifle. So moving on to my next note here, which was finally got an invite to the 2024 finale. And I was a little worried there for a second. I started off the season super strong with the Blue Ridge match. I took second right behind Nick Darzi, and I think I was only 2 points behind him, and he gave me 98 points. Second match, which was the qualifier, I shot well, but I just had a couple bad stages that really ate my lunch. I'm excited to actually put some trigger cam footage out there to show you guys that I'm human, because I zeroed out a stage at Hornady PRC, and it was the first time. It's been a while since I zeroed a stage, let's say that. So didn't do well there, and then the gap grind was able to rally enough, to be able to, squeak by. And I think I landed in like 159th right now after all the matches were said and done. So I'm rolling into the finale right now with no expectation other than just honestly be staying relevant, right? That's super important to me. I struggle with imposter syndrome when I'm not, when I feel like I'm not in the competition space, just because things are moving so quickly in this space. And I feel like, by being able to, shoot 3 matches a year, potentially get an invite to the finale, it keeps me on my toes, relevant. And, it just allows me to put my money where my mouth is, as someone that's a long range creative that's, going out and putting out content on the internet of hey, do this, not that, or whatever, however you want to, interpret my educational stuff. I would want to make sure that I'm, doing what I'm preaching, but B, more or less just being able to see hey, how can I now take my lessons learned and pass that on to my students or my audience that might find themselves, especially if you're a hunter or a professional sniper, that might find themselves in the same exact scenario in more of like a practical situation, like a, hunt of a lifetime shot, or again, taking a shot where you're carrying a rifle in defense of this nation, type stuff. So, yeah, I was just texting my buddy Will Orms, who was really good friend of mine. Got a lot of love for Will, and him and I were exchanging texts back and forth because I asked him if he was going to the finale, and he's like, "Dude, no, man, like it's crazy. 5 years ago, you could have like 230 points and make it easily into the top 100, but now just to get into the top 150, like you need like 260 some points. I think I have like 265. So it's just interesting how much the competition field has just been, again, I talk about this has just been insane, first and foremost. And yeah, I'm just happy to be able to get an invite today. Again, 5 years ago when I was competing at a pretty high level, like I knew I was going to get an invite every year just because I knew I, was always landing somewhere in the, 80, high 80s, low 90 percentile in terms of percentage, or, potentially sometimes winning the match. But now it's just like, I just hope to shoot 3 good matches, the 3 that I go to, and do well at. And, I try not to cherry pick, meaning that like, at the same time I'm on the West Coast, so it's like, all the matches out here, depending on who you talk to, is just, they're just a lot harder in terms of wind and the field, so sometimes, the winner will, gap the field by 10 to 12 points behind, and that's just like from first to second. And then from second to third, it's like another 5 to 7 points, and the next thing you know, you're like 8th place, and you're like 30 points behind the winner, but you got like a 75. And then you go to another match where it's a quote unquote meatball match. I wasn't even a meatball match. It's just the conditions aren't as windy or as tough. And then you've got, the top 100 walking away with like 80%. So, that's just one of the things. I think it's just the growth of the sport. I'm sure it'll iron itself out in the future, but yeah, for those that want to hear that competition stuff. So the finale this year is in my mountain home, Idaho. I've been to that range and venue. Brian Neese and Seth Howard, I think, are number one phenomenal individuals, really, really great shooters, but I think some of the best match directors in the nation. And I say that because every time I've been in one of their course of fire, it's been super fair. It's been challenging, and they just really know how to not only get you out of your comfort zone, but like I'm never done with the stage and I'm like, God, what was that? Like what was that BS? Right? I've definitely been to a bunch of those matches or stages, and every single one of their course of fires is just fun. And I remember every time I've shot one of theirs, I've not only learned a lot, but I'm able to take away a lot for myself and for my students for, field style conditions. And so I'm excited to see what kind of challenges they bring forth to the PRS finale to challenge us as shooters. And I'm excited to get some footage of it because you guys already know I'm going to be rocking a trigger cam and, run around with my whole selfie kit because, yeah, it'd be cool to just bring you guys along the show to see, what it takes to compete at the PRS finale for those that might be interested in maybe dipping their feet wet in competition in the future. So it's going to be nice. Mountain Home's just an hour south of Boise, so I'll be able to visit my family out in Boise, Idaho. My mom and sister live out there now, and my niece, and so it'd be nice for my daughter and niece to spend Zoe and my niece Alea to spend Halloween together. So we'll put you out a couple days early, and have some QT family time. And yeah, I'm going to be running a 6.5 Creedmoor. I've already started prepping for it. Even before I got the invite, I had a feeling because I knew I was sitting at 159. After some people are back out, so I started prepping already, but just prepping some 6.5 Creedmoor brass. I respun my barrel off the 6.5 47, the Drag Ball Z rifle, which is the video I just posted. I went from 6.547 back to the 6.5 Creedmoor, and just been prepping some brass for it, as well as prepping some loads. I'm going to be running the 153 A-tip combo in the 6.5 Creedmoor, and I'm going to run it right at that 2700. That was the first time I ran it this earlier past year at Hornady PRC. And I liked it. I liked the ability to, recover fast enough with recoil and see my shots even at the closer targets, like prairie dogs, like 250. That's one thing that I found tough on those like fast sixes, like the 6 Creed screaming at like 2950 or 3000, where it's like, sometimes those little prairie dogs, just like you miss and you're like, I don't know if that was left or right because I just saw smoke. But running that 2700 at 153 recoils, I've never had an issue with recoil management, but my dwell time with regard to like how quickly I'm able to like recover from a recoil and pick up my trace is really nice. And then even at the further distances, that 153 makes a pretty nice splash. So in the case that I miss for wind, or if I'm hitting a bigger target, I'm able to just see that impact. And now on top of that, again, I'm not fighting an RO for an impact. So a lot of pros and cons with that 6.5 Creedmoor 150, and you see a lot of competitor shooters kind of gravitating toward that for field matches, as well as like I think the 25 stuff. I haven't touched the 25 stuff yet, like 25 Creed or 2547. I know it's super popular right now, and I might spin that up for 2025, but we'll see. So yeah, I'm curious to see how the winds are going to be like in the November timeframe down in Mountain Home. I think the matches that I have shot out there have been like spring and summer, so I'm curious to see how the conditions are in November. I did shoot the NRL finale in 2018 in that area of like Idaho, Oregon. I think it's Gem State, and that was on the Idaho-Oregon border. Super great venue too, great course of fire there. I was running a 6 Creed 115 D-Tax back then, but yeah, I'm excited to again run these 153 A-tips and out of my 6.5 Creedmoor. So shifting gears to my third bullet point here, which is the trickle down effect. This comes from wanting to talk about how to maximize your training when you go out to the range, especially if you're not able to go to the range much. Like for me, the range is only 10 minutes from the house, and I'm able to go in, obviously go whenever I want, but the shooters out there that maybe have to make an hour, 2-hour commute, maybe once a month, because like again, they're full-time dads. You got full-time jobs, they're running $multi million companies, whatever the case is, right? Or you're just the average Joe rifleman that like, again, precision rifle shooting is your hobby, and obviously you want to progress as with your skill set. So it's like, what do I do to maximize my range time when you do to go to the range? So I jumped on a phone call with one of my previous students. His name is also Phil. Him and I have a really great relationship. He's a little older than I am, but another Marine infantry officer. And what I appreciate about Phil is, the Marine officer / grunt that comes out in him, and just not only that, but just very, very, very wise and kind of is just able to, share things in a different perspective for me. And so him and I were talking, because he's kind of in that same camp of like, not being able to go to the range as often as maybe me or some of these competitors. So we talk about the trickle down effect. But before I get into that, I would say if you are in that camp of not being able to go to the range, like the very first thing that I'd recommend is investing into a dry fire system like the Defat. And if you watched my Best of the West series, episode 2, I shouldn't say, sorry, not my Best of the West series. If you watch the Best of the West series that I helped collaborate with those guys, episode 2, we talk about fundamentals of marksmanship. and some dry fire drills kind of toward the very end, middle end there, because at the second half we talk about ballistic solvers, but we talk about the Defat system and some dry fire drills. But essentially, if you're unfamiliar with the Defat system, it's like a little ocular housing that you put in front of the ocular housing, and it allows you to focus your scope to like 12 to 13 feet. And then you get these printouts of these small targets, and you light up the target, and then you're able to dry fire inside your house. And one of the competitive shooters that I know did that, especially when she was like hooking and jabbing in her prime, and she's still doing really great, is Allison Zane. I remember seeing her stories when she was still in high school, dry firing like 3 to 5 times a night, and you listen to her podcast, and like she was dry firing all the time, and it showed when it came to competitions, because like she was just super efficient with her rifle. So yeah, highly recommend into the Defat system or dry fire system first and foremost, because that allows you to get your reps in of like training at home. This is where you're working on things like getting into position, building your position. Let's say if you're starting the prone, like the mechanics of like, building a modified push-up position, getting down, establishing your rifle to shoulder connection, building your bridge, all these things that lead up until, you break the shot, right? And then learning your synchronization of your breathing and your trigger press, right? So all these things can happen without any live fire, right? You're building your neural pathways that when you go to the range and actually do a live fire shoot, right, all you're doing is now checking to see how well your recoil management is and your ability to, spot your impacts and minimize your dwell time, all these things, right? Or your wind calls, whatever the case might be. One of the things that is on my like content list is like, hey, these are some dry fire drills that you can do at home, in terms of what I feel like from like a new shooter standpoint to, even an advanced shooter standpoint, of like, hey, these are the drills that I'd focus on to build those good habits in, so that again, when you go to the range to live fire, you have, again, you're maximizing your efficiency there. So, again, that's on my to-do list, maybe coming soon on this, again, dry fire drills that I can, overlay some trigger cam stuff down in my basement here. So, okay, so moving on to, after the dry fire drills, you go to the range, and, the biggest thing is like, okay, sometimes less is more. And what I mean by that is, when I went to the range with Dakota, getting ready for the gap grind, I mean, we could have easily went through like 60 to 100 rounds a day leading up to it, leading up to the gap grind. But I was like, no, we're only shooting 40 rounds each a day. That's if I shot, I'd shoot maybe 20 to 30, but Dakota would shoot 40, sometimes 50, shoot some of my leftovers. And instead of just running, because if again, from a competitive shooter standpoint, it's like, okay, do I run 4 stages off the gate, or do I work on core specific skills and tasks? And kind of taking a step back and talking about the trickle down effect, right? If you write out, okay, hey, if I've got 40 rounds, this is what I want to essentially isolate in terms of my training tasks that I want to work on, and allotting X amount of rounds to it. So I'd definitely start up with a warm up, like 100 rounds, 100 yards, maybe like 5 to 10 rounds. And this is like maybe checking your zero, some building breaks, right? Of like standing up in the standing position, jumping down to the prone, taking one shot, and then resetting. Maybe do it under time, maybe not. Just depends on your skill level, right? Depends on what you feel like, how you would apply your rifle. Once you do that, I would then, after like a 100-yard warm up and build in some confidence in my system, what I would typically do in the prone, just to like get my wind call in and just to work on my like, my ability to call wind, is I will go to like a medium range target. So like, medium range between being anywhere between like 5 to 700. And I would, try to open up with a first round wind call, right? Knowing that if I missed, I was going to follow up. So, 2 shots, right? even if I did hit right on my first shot, I would always going to follow up. So, so that's 5 for warm up and 2 for opening wind call, right? So that's 7 shots. And then now I'd go into what Phil talked about, which was, going into like a very difficult position, like that low standing, which is like, everyone's kryptonite, where it's like too high for a high kneeling and too low for a low kneeling, or sorry, too low for a standing position. And, you just got wobble zone everywhere. And, by learning to not perfect that, because it's, it's hard to really perfect that position, but like learning the quirks about that position to really get your wobble zone to where you need it to, if you're able to do that, then obviously getting back into the prone position is going to be super easy. Okay. I would say the only hesitant thing I have about that, going straight to like a low standing like that, is like if you don't have the mechanics or the wherewithal to understand how to manage your wobble zone, to where you're now just kind of ingraining bad habits of like timing your shot, right? So like, again, the low standing is probably going to produce, let's say for, the average shooter, anywhere between like a 0.6 to 0.7 wobble zone. That paired with the aim small, miss small mentality of having like a 1 MOA target at 100 yards or 300 yards, or whatever the case might be, that is a recipe for trigger slapping and tapping and lighter triggers, all these things. And so, I would err on the side of caution of, making sure that, first you get your wobble zone down to, whatever the size of the target that you're shooting at before you start, integrating, again, that shoot, aim small, miss small concept. Right. And so, I've had talks with some instructors about this, and again, we agree to disagree, but, some of, there is kind of like a level of timing, right? Or, with regard to your shot, your actual break. For me, my philosophy is if I've got a point, let's say a 0.6 wide target, which is roughly 2 MOA. So, at 600 yards, that's a 12-inch plate, which is a pretty big plate. If I have a 0.3 wobble, so if my wobble zone is only 6 inches on that plate, I know that if I apply good trigger press, right, and on my fundamentals marksmanship, I'm going to hit somewhere within those 6 inches, right? And I've got obviously my left and right, buffer for bad elevation or wind call. Okay. But for me, I don't feel like I'm timing my shot. I'm just waiting for that slack to take out. I'm pulling the slack out of my rifle as that wobble zone's moving, dancing around, or whatever, like that washing machine motion. And, I'm pressing my shot. And typically, as long as I'm not trying to snatch a trigger, that bullet's going to go into the center of where that wobble zone's at. So try it out. Let me know what you think. If that's something that, again, if it's new to you, if it's something that you're like, having light bulb moments, let me know. If you go test it out, write down in the comments. If you've tested it out, please drop a comment and let me know if that's something that you found. I can dive deep into, that stuff, because again, I'm super passionate about the art of driving a rifle and maximizing efficiency behind it. So anyways, we talked of the, first 5 rounds, 2 rounds at distance, and then, going to the low standing. And then, let's say that you are competing, or you're looking to, refine your skills as a competitive shooter. I would work on things like, transitions, right? Transitioning from position A to position B, right? Working on your mechanics in that, because I'm a big believer in where you make up your time on stages is your transition. And when it comes time to, once you establish your, sight picture again, that's when everything should slow down, right? So you always hear me say, move fast, shoot slow. And that's the concept behind it. 2 shooters, I say this time and time again, 2 shooters that I think are really phenomenal at their time management behind a precision rifle competition is Dave Preston and Nick Darcy. literally there's like a symphony playing in the background as they're shooting, because they literally, if it's a 90-second stage, they're taking their last shot at like 89.5 every single time. And they're usually either cleaning the stage or dropping one. So it's super cool to watch guys at that level shoot consistently. And that's one thing that, as a competitive shooter, I want to get better at is just managing my time better. So if you're just a regular rifleman, if you're a hunter, you should be, I would say, for hunters, you should be training in positions that you found yourself in the field, or you found other hunters in the field, especially if you're watching, the hunter. I feel like that's all over YouTube now, is like hunt videos, but watching some of their positions and seeing what positions they found themselves in, taking their shots. And I know that's a whole nother rabbit's hole in itself, but yeah. I keep losing my slippers down here. Yeah, so let me know if that helps. Again, I can, if starting with dry fire beforehand, leading up to, you go on the range day, and maximizing your time the best you can at the range. The next thing that I'll say before I kind of just like tee off this subject is obviously your main training objectives and your implied tasks, right? So implied tasks are things like, okay, if I'm going to work on my transitions, so transition from low kneeling to the standing off of PRS barricade, then what is implied is things like establishing side alignment, side picture, closing the bolt, good trigger control, right? And follow through and all that stuff, right? Because really the only motions that you're doing is being able to transition. That it should be your core focus, because we only focus on one thing at a time. Same thing with like recoil management, right? So if I'm training for recoil management, now I'll start in the prone and I'll work, okay, hey, what kind of pressures do I need to apply? And when you're working on a recoil management, you have to have a control. So whether that control is like no pressure, as much forward pressure as you can have, right? As much rear pressure, right? Keep in mind, there's 3 types of pressures that we could put on a rifle: forward pressure, no pressure, or free recoil, or rear pressure. Okay, so find out which one works for you based off your shooting style and what you can repeatably do in any position. Okay, but when I'm working recoil management, right, I have a control first. Like, okay, I'm going to load into this, and take a shot. First, I'm going to see what my stability looks like, and then I'm going to take a shot to see what my recoil management, how much my recoil is jumping. And then I try to repeat it. Okay, can I repeat that same thing? Boom, okay, I repeat it. Now I'm going to do something different with regard to maybe my pressures. Now I'm going to apply rear pressure, or maybe I'm going to change my lower leg placement. Whatever the case is, those are specific training objectives or tasks that you're thinking of. And what's implied is you're applying good trigger control and follow through, that you've got good jaw weld or reference point, that you've got good side alignment, side picture, right? Because like if you're practicing recoil management, but you're not doing those things, like if you've got bad parallax, or if you got scope shadow, then like obviously the test that you're doing is null and void. But it's all discovery learning. Hopefully this makes sense. I know I'm rambling off here, but yeah, it just got me firing on all cylinders here, and super passionate, as you guys know, about just being able to hopefully equip you guys to go out there and find your own truth. Just don't take my word for it. And that's one thing, guys, like, trust but verify. We would say that a lot in the military: trust but verify. And one of the stigmas in the sniper community was just like, because he was a sniper and he was an instructor, like, I'm going to listen to everything that he says. And sure, up until a certain point of my career, like, that was like literally how I went about life. Because like, he obviously got to where he was at because he did these things. And then I became an instructor, and I realized, gosh, a lot of this is just a regurgitation. And so hopefully you guys are able to go out there and test these things, find out your own truths about what works for you, and report back. I'm curious to see what kind of truths you found about your shooting journey and experience. So the last thing that I will talk about, this is kind of like my, shifting gears from the precision rifle realm and kind of like my motivational inspiration talk, whether it serves you guys or not. But I just wanted to share, with it being my 36th birthday, it's pretty cool to say that I say this to my girlfriend and my family all the time. I'm an adult in my adult years, right? Because when we turn 18, we think that all of a sudden, because we're able to do certain things, we're an adult, like join the military, or like back then we could buy tobacco. You have to be 21, all these things. Hopefully you guys get a laugh at that. But you know what? I joined the Marine Corps at 18. I thought I was a grown ass man, and I realized I didn't know shit about fuck. Excuse my language, especially if you have kids in your car. But over the last 18 years, from my time in the Marine Corps to now, I know that I've, just like a snake, have shed different layers, right? And to my core, I feel like I'm the same person, but I've evolved in terms of, like, again, my wisdom, and you hear this a lot in my experiences. And I just want to share some of that stuff with you guys of what I've learned over the last 36 years. Kind of like, I've got 5 things here. And the very first thing that is on my list here is, don't ever let one moment define who you are. This really hits home for me because, I know we have all been in those just situations that we're not proud of, that, who we are at that moment. And there's 2 types of people, people that just kind of hold on to that avatar, or people that do something about it and change. And I made sure that I was the one that, did something about it and changed that behavior of who I was. So A, it didn't happen again, but B, that I could, use that experience to just elevate myself, and you're going to hear me say that a lot as a theme in the next however many long I talk about this. But a quick backstory on that bullet point for me was getting dropped from sniper school. I've got a couple other ones that I'll probably share in the future of the podcast, but the first one that really hits home is getting dropped from sniper school. So in 2009, I got my first attempt at sniper school as a young pig. We had just got back from Fallujah. And, again, not to dive into a rabbit hole of, like, the scout sniper selection process to be able to go to school, but essentially on the West Coast, you only have 3 opportunities back then to go to sniper school: for 1 TAC, 2 TAC, and 3 TAC, whatever that year is. And so each one of those classes has 32 students. Well, you've got, let's say, like, 10 units trying to get their Marines at that schoolhouse. So if you break that down, that's roughly 2 to 3 Marines from that unit to go to sniper school, to, like, keep a, like, fair across the board, between, the different infantry battalions, recon Marines, right? And so out of my 36-man platoon, only, like, I think, I don't know the exact number. I think only, like, 12 to 14 were snipers, and the other, the other 20 of us were pigs, right? Some of them were, like, terminal lances where they're getting out, so they didn't have the time to go to school. But, like, out of my peers, me and Ruben Baldwin was his name. He was my teammate. We're the next ones in the chute to go to sniper school. So, one of the things that I got from the sniper community was, like, everything's a competition, and I think that's kind of what I have in my head, and what drives me today is, like, it's a friendly competition, right? Because, like, these are my brothers, the people that I'm served with. These are the people that, like, have my back in the worst case scenarios. But at the same time, I'm competing against them to go to sniper school, or go to these events, or be on the A team, be on team 1, or whatever the case is. So me, my teammate Baldwin, when we got back from Iraq, post-deployment leave, we're the first ones to go to cyber school. It's like May of 2009. Zoe is 2 months old, 3 months old. Her mom and I are not, really doing too well in terms of our relationship. And it's funny when you go to cyber school. This is on the pre-screening checklist. So the pre-screening checklist, one of the bullet points is like, does said named Marine have any like marital or court issues that's going to prohibit them from training? And obviously I had to get that signed off, and I was like, no, I'm good to go, Gunnery Sergeant. Completely wrong. And so having some issues with my Zoe's mom at that point, and then on top of that, to add to the friction, and this was definitely an not very smart move on my part, but my best friend who I talked about in episode 1, Sam, he was going to combat instructor school. So he just reenlisted he was stationed in Hawaii, did 4 years out there, reenlisted, came to Camp Pendleton. And so SOI, the School of Infantry, combat instructor school, and cyber school, even the cyber school that I taught at, they were all in the same kind of School of Infantry area. The cyber school, like student bunking was like overflow on the other side of the SOI area, which was like the recon trailers, and like the living, conditions were just like not up to snuff. Right. But it was 3 months. I should have sucked it up. So that's error number 1 on my part. So I decided to stay with Sam, my best friend, because he had a room in the barracks room closer to the schoolhouse. But he was training that week out in the field for combat instructor school. So I had a key to his room. And again, I just remember, every day at cyber school, you're just getting slayed. You got running up and down the known distance yard line. You've got, first phase, you got land navigation, field skills, all these things. And I remember going to his room that night, and the next morning was a 04 forced march led by one of the cyber school instructors, who was actually the recon sniper that was at that during that time. And so I had one of the original iPhones. Hopefully this story isn't drawn too long, but I had one of the original iPhones. Again, this is 2009. I think it was iPhone 1. And back then, the little the knob on the side, which now is like the action button if you have, but it still kept its same function for the longest time. When you switched it back and forth, you could go from obviously, ringer to silent. But when it was on silent, there was no way to go into the settings and turn off vibration. So like, even if you had it on silent, the phone would still vibrate. Like they didn't have, the update to, turn that completely off. And so get back to the room, super smoke checked, got to wake up super early. It's only like maybe like a 7-minute jog to cyber school from, where I was at in SOI. And so, Zoe's mom calls, and again, like super tired, smoke checked, and like, I'm not having this conversation. So, we get off the phone, but it was probably just me hanging up on her. And that's what I did, because I was like, I don't have time for this. I've got be at school in the morning. Number one, super immature of me, like looking back, definitely, handled that poorly. But essentially, because she kept blowing my phone up, I turned my phone on silent. But it was still buzzing underneath my pillow. So I was like, F this. So I just turned off my phone in general. But my phone was also my alarm clock that has been waking me up every morning since then. So you can see. And I woke up exactly at 3:59. And, if anything, cyber school is hard on their times, right? 04, you're out the door and you're on your ruck march. So I had to be there at 3:45. But by the time I got to the schoolhouse, it was like 4:07, and I just stood outside the pig hatch, and I was just like, at that point, I was just like, obviously super shamed. Fast forward, it took about a week for me to get completely dropped. So I got dropped from sniper school because of that. And when I got dropped from sniper school, the staff N2IC, and everyone that's in the community will probably know around this time frame who the staff N2IC was, but he brought me into the office and he looked at me and he said, "You're getting dropped, and you'll most likely not come back here. And I can tell you right now, you'll never be a sniper." Those exact words. And I was like, "Roger that, Gunnery Sergeant." And I left and packed all my things. And I remember the day that I got dropped because my corporal came and picked me up. And the very first thing that he said is like, "Man, it's a sad day, Leo." It's like, not only are you getting dropped from sniper school, but Michael Jackson died today. So I always knew the date, of like when I got dropped. And so he followed me on social media. I always make a post about it. But when I went back to my unit, which was down the street, I had to see my platoon sergeant. And what was funny, I guess not funny, but what was like, what was, just like what really just obviously made this worse was the fact that my new platoon sergeant just came from the schoolhouse as one of their instructors, as a chief instructor. So obviously he's tied into the instructor group there of like, hey, what really happened, and obviously they're telling my story, and and again, like, don't blame him. Like, it's like this young Lance Corporal, like, thinking he can do whatever the F he want, like absolutely, like, maximum punishment in terms of like, what he needs to do looking back, right? And so I go to talk to my platoon sergeant, who's still there. It's like 1600. And the very first thing he says to me is like, "Hey, because you're not able to fulfill the obligations of potentially becoming a sniper, right? Because when you serve in a sniper platoon, like you have the ability to go to sniper school. Like, you should have that ability, which is like have like 2 years left time in service. You have the all these things, first class PFT, 100 GT score, expert on the rifle range, and the ability to be able to go to school with no NJPs and stuff like that. But because I got essentially quote unquote blacklisted from sniper school, I wasn't able to be given that opportunity. So my platoon sergeant said at that time was like, "We're going to let you go from the platoon and send you." And I mean, it was the first time that I'd cried in a while in my like I think it was like early 20s, 21. I was 20, and so at that point in my life, I was like the lowest that I've ever been. And I obviously, like a couple days later, I was kind of waiting around, and I was trying to figure out like why I hadn't been moved yet, because that's what my platoon sergeant said. But my team leader, Abernathy, and for those that know who are in the community, Abernathy is a legend, and my one of my mentors, big brothers, but Abernathy was my team leader, and I mean, he stuck his neck out for me, and he pretty much told platoon sergeant, like, "Hey, I got him, I'll fix this." And from what I heard, I don't know if this is true or not. I never actually asked him this, but like, after talking to some of the NCOs, like, he made it a point. It's like, "Hey, if Valayo's gone, then I'm gone too." And like, again, the hallmark of a leader to be able to say that or do that. And I ended up not getting dropped from the platoon, but you can imagine the shitstorm of like working parties and being on the worst watches, and just like, hey, if we have the worst job that the sniper platoon is tasked with, guess who we're putting on it? We're putting Velayo on it. And I had to own up to it. Like, I fucked up, and that was what I needed to do to show that I was still a part of this unit, and that I still wanted to be there, and I still wanted to execute my duties. Because at this point, like, you can either be an asset or you can be a liability, and I decided obviously to be an asset. And one of the things that I even said, even though like in my head at this point I wasn't able to become a sniper, I was like, I'm just going to be the best pig that the sniper community ever saw. And so, the rest is history in terms of like me being able to get my second chance at cyber school, which is another soul story in itself, becoming a cyber school instructor, and now, where I'm at today. So, all that to say, don't ever let one moment define who you are, both positive and negative, right? And, so that's on a negative connotation, but on a positive connotation, like, in 2018, I won the PRS finale, and as much as like, at the highest point I could be in my life, right? Of like, doing really well in terms of my competition career. Like, I didn't want to ride on that because, there's just so many more things to learn out there in terms of like, how we can drive a precision rifle and how effective we can be behind it. And, I continue to compete and get my butt whooped by all these dentist 16-year-old girls. Well, she's like 19 now in college, but don't ever let one moment define who you are. That statement kind of ties into number 2, which was don't ever let someone tell you that you can't do something or be someone. When I was still teaching at cyber school, I would have a lot of young gentlemen DM me on Instagram. And it's crazy to see the shift of like what people ask me for now versus like when I was at cyber school. Because when I was still active duty, I get a lot of messages of like, hey, I want to join the military. I don't know what to do. My parents don't want me to join the military. And it's like, bro, and again, I can say this just because it's like, I was in his shoes at that one point. My parents didn't want me to be in the infantry, but at the end of the day, it's your life, man. Like, you have to do what's best for you. And like, don't let your parents dictate what kind of future. And so many, I have met so many people in my life where they let their parents dictate their future and they absolutely regret it. I've not met one person. Sure, they're sour about their 4 years in active duty service. Like they'll do it all over again. Every single one of them, every single one of people that I've served with, even if they did 4 years, would do it all over again because of the experiences they had. And I'm not saying that you should join the military right at 18 years old, but I'm saying don't let someone tell you that you can't do something. Or be someone. And for me, when someone tells me that, like the very first thing that comes in my head is like, okay, watch me or watch this, and it's not going to be overnight or it's not going to be 2 weeks from now, but like eventually I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to show you what's up. That's just how my mindset has always been. So, I'm going to shift to number 3 here, which is you're not entitled to a fucking thing in life. And I say this because I've definitely been in that camp of like, feeling that because I was, a certain rank or a certain, because I was a certain performer that I was entitled to do X, Y, Z, but I have to always reel myself in and realize like, every day is ground zero. Every day is like, I need to prove to not only to other people, but to myself that I'm capable of like performing the tasks that I need to win the day or, whatever the case is. And even with what I've done in the past, it doesn't, again, going back to number 1, doesn't define, who I am. Like, I see this a lot in post-military, like veteran culture, right? I can relate to just seeing a lot of individuals kind of wear their military service on their sleeve by the way they dress, by the way they talk, right? By the way they, they can't stop talking about their time in the military. I say that as I'm talking about my time in the military now, right? So funny. But yeah, there are things that you are entitled to as a veteran, which is what I highly recommend taking advantage of: the GI Bill, the VA loan, all the VA benefits that you can think of. But what joining the military like doesn't do is, you to ask everyone and their mom for a 10% military discount. I'm sorry, but like, I that's, if that's one thing that I hate is like, is everyone trying to get their 10% because, oh, like, look at me. And I get it. Sometimes, times are hard, especially nowadays in the economy, paying $8 for a carton of eggs. What the hell? But guys, hopefully I'm not too off my rocker here, but just be a good person, use our military experience to just elevate who we are as people, and, just, educate the masses of what your experience was in the military, and the friendships that you curated over that time, and the skills that you gained to, again, become a better, to be a contributing member to society, right? So that's just me. Again, you're not entitled to a thing in life. My bullet point number 4 is there's always room for improvement. I love this one. I love this one because it's not just in the technical aspect of like driving a precision rifle, my cinematography, right? Like, this goes along the lines with like, being a better person, right? Or better father, better significant other, better son. I know I'm not perfect. There are sometimes conversations or, disagreements that I don't handle very well. Maybe I get into an argument with my mom, my sister. Maybe I blow up on Zoe. And after the dust settles, I take a step back and I'm like, okay, how did I handle that? Claire's really good at, kind of sanity checking with me. And usually it's along the lines of miscommunication. It takes me a while, but, I would admit like, hey, like I was wrong at this point. And then how can I fix it so it doesn't happen again? There's always room for improvement. And don't be afraid to fail. This is a fun one because I can tie it easily to the precision rifle space, because it's like, obviously when we go to the range we want to hit targets, but like, don't be afraid to miss, because it's going to teach you a lot. Sometimes I go to the range just to miss so that I can see what my wind call is, or reverse engineer the wind, whatever that, or miss to work on my ability to re-engage the target, right? Which is a skill set to have, of like, hey, if I miss, this is what I needed to get back on target. And this is, the correction that I need to make, whatever that, that's a skill in itself. And so, every time that I have failed something, I know that, it was a really great learning experience. And it, hopefully allowed me not to make it again. So, and this is coming from a freaking perfectionist that, I've got 100 videos that I've edited but because it didn't make my standard, that it's just sitting in collecting, dust in my hard drives. So, yeah, there's always room for improvement. We don't have it all figured out. I don't have it all figured out. But I think if we can just have that mindset to continue to grow spiritually, physically, emotionally, all the things, technically, we're just able to enhance our lives and others that are around us. The last thing I'll say, my last bullet point here is, if you are given a second chance, grab it with both hands. And again, I relate to this twofold. Obviously, my story about cyber school, number 1. And number 2 is my relationship with Zoe. Again, as some of you guys know or do not know, for the first 10 years of my career, I selfishly chased my career as a sniper. I wanted to be the best sniper that I could be. Wanted to make changes to the community. Wanted to do all these things. Really, and I didn't do anything. Really, I didn't make a dent. I didn't make the impact that I wanted to, just because, again, I was just a number. And what was unfortunately, and the result of that was, the biggest thing that really took the brunt of that selfishness was, my relationship with my family, more specifically my daughter. And again, I don't want to say I regret it or anything, because obviously, like, doing that has led me to the opportunities that I have now, the ability to say that I'm a long range creator, that I was a professional instructor, that I'm my life now is built around long range shooting. But when I was able to get her back in 2019, I made sure that this time I'd never let her go, and that I wanted to really build that relationship. And honestly, it's been the best thing that has happened to me since I've been out, and in my life. Being a father is the best job that I'll ever have. So again, if you would have asked me all this stuff 16 years ago, when I was in my 20s, 18 years ago when I turned 18, like, I would have, I think my list would have been different. I was, again, diving into cinematography. I'm really loving documentary style filmmaking. So lately, for my clients and just for like project work, either for school or whatnot, I've been doing these interview questions with my subjects, my talents. And one of the questions that I have at the very end is like, what would you tell your 18-year-old self? And that's a very good question to kind of get the gate, the mind moving, or like hit them right in the feels. And honestly, I'm not able to answer that for myself. What would I tell my 18-year-old self? Because again, as much as I've enjoyed the journey of what I got to now, I think, one of the things that for me still really like I hold on to is what my dad told me when I left for the Marine Corps, when I left for boot camp. He had grabbed onto me, and at this point, my parents had split. My mom and dad were divorced, and I was joining the Marine Corps because I wanted to get out of the house because I had a broken family. Super sad story, but my dad grabbed on me, and I hadn't seen him for a while. It was like the only time that I'd seen him in like 6 months, and I was getting ready to go to the security airport before going down to San Diego, and he said, "Only Philip will take care of Philip." And honestly, that's probably what I still tell my 18-year-old self, because as selfish as that sounds, it's the reality. As many of the friends that I do have that I call brothers, right? We've got our own problems, and as much as like, I've had really good friends of mine and brothers that have picked me up and seen the worst of my days. Like, at the end of the day, the only person that can get me out of that funk is myself. And it's true. So I wonder, I'm asking you guys if that's the same for you. We all have our demons. We all have our what ifs, regrets, and they shouldn't be regrets. They should just be more like life lessons, right? Just don't make the same mistake. Yeah, what kind of advice would you give your 18-year-old self? Where whoever's listening to this podcast already, an hour and 10 minutes in, but if you're listening to this and you can relate to my story, all I'll say is don't give up. And I'd be lying to you if I told you it was going to be easy, because it's not. But it's super rewarding. The struggle is real. There's days that you want to quit, but if you stick it out, it'll be worth it. So take it out a day at a time. The only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And I heard a quote. I paused there because I remember this quote from Kyle Carpenter in one of his book. The smallest of steps can eventually complete even the grandest of journeys. Kyle Carpenter. Yeah, so I remember reading that and being like, it's absolutely true. So, okay, enough of me on my soapbox. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. A lot of information. Probably, again, my longest one to date, episode number 4. Sure, I'll probably revisit that story, one of those stories again in the future, depending on how long I bring this podcast. I do want to bring people on. You know, it's not getting harder to talk on this podcast, but you know, yes, I struggle with imposter syndrome sometimes. Sometimes I wonder how you guys even listen to me, because I listen, like when I rewatch my footage and I'm watching and I'm like, man, I'm so, yeah, it's tough to watch myself. So I appreciate everyone that sits and listens to my podcast, whether you're on a long drive to a match, whether you're in the reloading room. I hope to, again, provide some type of value to you, your friends, your family. You know, a lot of you guys, you know, in this space are definitely a lot older than I am. You know, you guys relate to my story about being a dad, but you share some of the things I talk about with your kids, which is awesome. Which I appreciate you guys giving that feedback. You know, I'm passionate about life. I'm passionate about teaching. Passionate about sharing my experiences with you guys. And yeah, again, if you are in the reloading room, be safe. You know, don't do anything that I wouldn't do. Make sure you wear your safety glasses. Ryan, hey, if you're on a long drive to a match, I hope you travel safe and that you get to the match safely. If you're on a commute to work, get there safe. And yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you guys on the next one. Again, reminder, Alaska 2025. Tell your friends that are up there. If you're in that area, put it on your calendar. And if you are going to the PRS finale, if you see me, see this man bun, come say hi. I'd love to really meet you. Introduce yourself. I appreciate all the love and support that you guys have given me, not only through my years in this space, but even more recently, especially with the more activity that I've been doing lately with regard to my YouTube videos and consistency, hopefully. So, all right, that's it. Appreciate you guys. Good night, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Until then, remember, you have control.